Oh no, there's children.
Now dig on this.
What's up, boy?
What's up, girl? And welcome to Classic Movie Banter. You know, that podcast where me, that guy Brenton, and that other guy Nathan,
Hey-o.
we talk about films that are 20 years or older, 20 years, or in this case,
37 years.
and we tell you if those films are still worth watching today or not, and more importantly, if they're worth getting your mates around on a Thursday evening. I mean, it could be an evening of your choice, but we like to pick a Thursday because it starts with a T, and put on that film and have a good old watcheroo. Nathan, how you going, mate?
Dude, I'm going bloody good. I tell you what, I'm in a movie watching mood today because, oh boy, have we watched so many movies, Brenton.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Have we watched a movie that's felt like many movies? So,
It has, Brenton. It has.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, like, in principle, I have nothing wrong with the films that go for 4 hours. I'm like, one extravaganza, sure, extended editions, Lord of the Rings, let's bloody do it. Tell you what, like when I sat down this week to do Once Upon a Time in America, title drop casually, I was like, oh boy, this one feels like it's going to be a big mission.
Well, Nathan, for your information, the extended editions actually don't go as long as this film at all. Like, no singular extended edition. I mean, like, in total, if you were to watch the 3 extended editions back to back, I mean, why would you do that to yourself?
Of Lord of the Rings, yeah.
But that would obviously be longer. But, like, by themselves, I think the longest one goes for about 3.5.
Do you reckon, like, Peter Jackson was watching Once Upon a Time in America, and he's like, I'm going to do that.
He's like, I'm going to do that. And then he realized how difficult it was.
Actually, there's a pitch. Would you love to see a gangster film set in Middle-earth?
I feel like The Hobbit tried to be that at points. You know what I mean? I feel like as soon as they got...
When we went to, Lake Town, yeah.
there was some dirty shit going on there. And it was like the mayor was corrupt. There was that other guy that was like... it became like a weird caricature in the third film. Dude, the Hobbit films aren't great.
Stephen Fry's just like sitting in like the Lake Town, and he's just like, I'm gonna watch a ballerina dance for me.
Yeah.
Look through this brick.
And then he got like unceremoniously like just destroyed by like... Didn't the dragon land on him?
I think so.
Wasn't it death by dragon?
I'm pretty sure he died like that.
Anyway, spoilers for The Hobbit.
Yeah, if anyone cares. I just remember there's that awkward Stephen Colbert cameo where he's walking across and he's like, I'm Stephen Colbert. And then I remember, what is it? That assistant to Stephen Fry dresses up like a woman at one point.
Yes, that's what I mean. He becomes like a weird caricature, and then I'm pretty sure he gets killed in some stupid way. I can't remember. Like, I honestly can't remember much about that third film because it was so visually uninteresting.
I remember Billy Connolly rocks up at one point.
Oh, that's right. He rides down riding like a mountain goat or something ridiculous.
Yeah. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Hobbit films, Brenton. What are we here to talk about?
We're here to talk about Once Upon a Time in America. You did name drop it before, so the secret's out. Nathan, why are we talking about this film?
We're talking about this film because last week we got a letter from Jack, one of the listeners. You too can write in if you want us to talk about an old movie. Just email us. Links are below in the episode description. And he said to us, he likes our Dollars Georgie episodes, and he asked if we can do any more Westerns. And so we reviewed last week Once Upon a Time in the West. Give it a listen. But I wasn't that impressed with it. And it's a shame because I love Sergio. So I thought, fuck it. Like, the only other major film we haven't done of his is, Fuck Duck You Suck. I don't want to get a part of that stupid title, stupid movie. But we haven't done Once Upon a Time in America. So I thought, fuck it. Let's just do it this week.
Yeah, man. Why not get into it? That film that was released in 1968 and was directed by little-known director Sergio Leone. I think that's going to be the last time I can ever do that.
I'm so
joke.
glad you're going, this gag is dying, Brenton. Well, you mispronounce this acclaimed director's name. It pisses me off every time.
Okay, I'm going to, this week, since as I think this will be the last film we do of Sergio's, I will give him the good grace to finally give him his name, in full, which is Sergio Leone.
I reckon just like the second we do another acclaimed director, you're going to be like, wait a minute, who's this like Alfredo Hitchcock? God damn it, Brenton.
Who's this Steven Spielberg?
But yeah, anyway, so sit down, Brenton. I'm going to finally educate you about this director and pitch you Once Upon a Time in America.
Can you pitch me the movie?
Okay, Brenton, do you love gangster films?
I do love gangster films.
All right, here's a radical idea, mate. Imagine a gangster film, but with children.
Oh, ooh. Okay, that is radical. Continue.
Doesn't that sound good? Because you know what? Imagine just like, New York, just gangster city, we're in the 1920s, I think, or maybe even earlier. I think we're in the 1890s actually at the start of it. And we're following the life of Robert De Niro, or at least his character. called Noodles.
Wait. De Niro's is how old? What are you talking about?
Yeah, De Niro. He's a time traveling alien. No, so we're watching this guy called Noodles, right? Which is, when I think of threatening gangster names, I think of Noodles. That's my protagonist name. We watch this kid grow up in early New York. The city's still forming, like the child himself, and he's growing up. He's with kids. They're kind of fucking about, and for a while we watched them as kids just kind of enter the working world because they didn't have job seeker, they didn't have any good CVs at the time, so they turned to crime, and these kids get around the bootlegging world of the Prohibition era.
Ooh.
Yeah, these kids, they're like, fuck it, let's form a criminal gang and let's do Oliver Twist, but New York, New York Twist, they'll call themselves.
Can you just quickly for our listeners, this is going to be a bit of a long pitch, by the way, but this movie is 4 hours long. So,
yes.
Nathan, just a quick question. Can you elaborate on it for our younger listeners, what the Prohibition era is/was?
Oh, okay. Sure. I'm like getting like a history textbook slamming on the table. Like one of the Hollywood producers like brought in their kid for the pitch. The kid's like scratching his head like, Dad, what's a prohibition?
Now, Jimmy, we're going to make the most of your homeschooling for today. Please, Nathan, continue.
This is a bit bonkers because now I think about it, so Prohibition was like an era in the 20s where like alcohol was banned. Like the United States banned alcohol, the sale of it. So people just like said, fuck that and just kept drinking it illegally. I'm trying to imagine today if they did that again, like there would be literal riots.
Do you think? Yeah, I think so. I think it wouldn't go down well. Let's say that.
Yeah, it just wouldn't go down well. Anyway, it was like a period where it came and it went because America was like, fuck this, we're losing money, and also like alcohol's great. Yeah, so we watched De Niro and his friends kind of just, ship around some crates of booze in New York. Anyway, so he gets embroiled in crime and he rises the ranks, and then maybe he learns the true lesson that crime doesn't pay because he witnesses the horrors and violence that come with wars. Brenton, have you ever seen a Scorsese film about crime?
I have.
It's basically that. It's basically that, Brenton. We're going to do that, but we're going to do the original Scorsese film, e.g. the Sergio Leone, how you pronounce his name, version of this crime story. Outside that, Brenton, I don't know what else this movie's got besides it's just like, it's your gangster film. It's, we're going to have other acclaimed actors. James Woods is De Niro's right-hand man.
Do you mean Hades himself?
Yes, Hades himself, if only. He's in this movie. Jennifer Connelly, she's young at one point. I don't know. It's got people in it. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just
Jennifer Connelly's young at one point. I love that. What a selling point. Well,
she isn't lost in the maze this time. And yeah, I think it's we watched this film over decades. We start in the 1890s, we finished in the 1960s. We watched the whole lifespan. And
so what you're saying is that we're watching the life story basically of a young gangster in New York.
Essentially that, because there's not enough crime stories in New York. But this is the original one, Brenton. This is Once Upon a Time in America. Welcome to this movie.
Thanks very much for the pitch, Nathan. Can I be honest though?
Yes.
I don't think it was a very good pitch, but hear me out.
Okay.
On the off the back of that, I feel like there's no good way to pitch this movie because part of the allure of this film and the way that the final cut, because then we have to talk about all the versions we're watching. So we watched Sergio Leone's Vision, right? We didn't watch the theatrical release from the US or whatever that was
we watched the full fucking thing. Yeah, we dug it.
And so as such, we're jumping around time zones a lot. We're never really sure what's necessarily going on, but eventually you get a feel that we're just kind of watching the life story of this guy.
Yeah, because it starts off in the I say the future, the weird future of the 1960s, and then we kind of go back, and then we go back to the forward. It's all around the place.
Exactly. It's hard to pitch. So you did very well. Is my point.
Thank you. Brenton, have you seen The Irishman?
I have actually.
Okay, great. It's The Irishman. That's what this movie is. There you go. There's an easy pitch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a blatant rip-off of the Irishman. Sergio Leone had such clairvoyance, he decided to copy that film that came out 60 years later.
First question off the ranks.
Yes.
I mean, aside from the fact of how did he possibly time travel into the future to rip off Marty Scorsese? But Nathan.
Yes.
Can you please tell me how you watched this movie? Did you watch it in one sitting, two sittings,
Good question.
5 sittings?
Like with all these two-parters that we've done, Zhivago and all that kind of stuff. I did this in 2 sittings, right? But here's an interesting point, Brenton. So it's a 4-hour movie, right? So one would assume that the intermission is at the 2-hour mark or around that. But this movie, the intermission's at the 3 and a bit hour mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I call bullshit on this intermission. It's well over 2/3 through the film.
Yeah, and at that point, because I remember thinking, oh, maybe there just isn't an intermission. Maybe this is a 4-hour sitting kind of movie. So I stopped it at the 2-hour mark, which is, by the way, there's a natural moment where there's a beat and the film kind of winds winds down a bit. So it's a good point to stop.
Absolutely.
And then I watched it again the next day. And I think watching this in 2 sittings is the correct way to do this because Christ, this is a long movie and the pacing is not generous.
Well, I was going to say, like, it'd be odd, like, having seen this, like, in the cinemas at the time and seen this cut and just had to sit there for 4 hours and watch it. Would have been an interesting
I think it would have
time.
been like Inglourious Bastards. I think, like, as soon as we're in the cinemas, I think they would have, like, locked the doors. We're like, fuck, we can't get out. It's just sit through this whole fucking thing.
So off the back of that, I'll also say that I stopped watching just over 2 hours through the film and watched it in 2 sittings.
Yeah.
What do you think about Once Upon a Time in America?
Look, it's I feel like this movie is the reason we do this show, Brenton. We have been hand given a classic. This is as classic as it gets, right? It's allegedly his opus, magnum opus, right? There's one of the greatest gangster films of all time. It's acclaimed, and everyone's like, fuck this saga, right? Look at this saga of Robert De Niro. Fuck, he's a gangster. Who would have thought? Never seen it before. And like, I don't know, because I can imagine at the time it was. Okay, this is a really complicated thing, right? Because can we talk about Martin Scorsese?
Yeah, sure.
Because I feel like Martin Scorsese has tried to make this film maybe like 6 times. Like, this is like after watching this, I so get what Martin's trying to do. Because like whenever Martin's just like, fuck Marvel, this is cinema, I feel like this is like what he points at, right? And also the reason you and I have the copy of this film that we do is literally because Scorsese restored it. Like, yes. This is an impeccably made film, right?
Yes.
This is so well crafted and it's all there, isn't it, Brenton? Everyone's at the party. But I don't know if I love it because I don't know if this film is doing anything different compared to what I've seen Scorsese do afterwards compared to what I've seen a lot of gangster films do afterwards. I don't know. Did you love it? Am I again once? Because I feel like I'm going to do the same things I did in West. I feel like I'm going to be in the dark again while you discuss.
So we've watched a bunch of Sergio's filmography. We've watched the Dollars trilogy. We've watched Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah.
And now we've watched Once Upon a Time in America. And obviously I've given a thumbs up to all those films.
Brendan's like trying to cover up like his jacket with like his like number one Siergo fan t-shirt he's just wearing underneath. Like he's like, ooh.
Yeah. Getting ready to take it off. No. So I thought that he kind of peaked with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Like you watch that, you go, wow. He defines a genre. He defines himself. He defines everything he needs to define in that film. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know, if it's even possible for anyone to have topped that, but Nathan, oh boy, he did it because this movie's a bloody bona fide masterpiece,
Brenton.
and it's one of the best movies ever made for sure, hands
Brenton.
down. And for me, it's funny that you bring up Scorsese, because for me, it actually made me like this movie more so than some of Scorsese's greats. You know what I mean?
Because you see the original, the pioneer.
Yeah, and the Irishman comparison is very apt, and I think that it's also got a lot in common with Goodfellas as well.
Absolutely,
it's got so much in common with Goodfellas.
Like so much. Casino is a lot like this as well.
Yep.
Even Raging Bull to an extent, I think draws a lot from this. Like Mean Streets. Like there's so many Scorsese films that he's tried to do this with.
I say Goodfellas and The Irishman because those films literally follow the lives of their protagonists and up to the end basically. Goodfellas not so much. I mean, we see him to a point, but the whole point of Irishman is that we see him to the end of his life, and there's there's closure in that. But yeah, I think this movie is absolutely brilliant. I think it's probably Sergio's best, to be honest, and I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to come into the guy who is so well known for like defining the spaghetti western and to walk away being like, oh yeah, he made probably one of, if not the best gangster movie of all time.
Yeah, because like all the bones are there, right? Like this is, you got to know some things going in, right? For the first like hour and a half of this, you watched gangster movie but kids, and Brent said, I wasn't a fan of that part of the movie one bit. I was not a fan at all.
It's funny because initially I was like, oh no, there's children. I was like, oh, I was right there with you, and then I think I warmed into it.
Did you really? That's saying something for Brenton, by the way. Like if you get around this child performance, like,
can I say I think the most alluring aspect of this movie is that it's called Once Upon a Time in America, right? It's a film by all intents to be about America, right? And that's a big thing to say. It's a very epic story, right?
Yeah.
But my point is that it's so cool that like someone who was not American made this movie.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to saying something about something, I feel like I love the perspective from the outside. I think you'll get a clearer view. It's like,
that's right.
Yeah. And also this man has spent like decades prior, like not almost parodying or like being, or like, presenting this very satirical version of American culture, right? Like, Sergio was so well known for his Western films of like saying, actually, no, the West was full of violence. Like it wasn't, because remember, the West was like romanticized in all these serials beforehand. Then Sergio's actually like, no, the West fucking sucks. Like it wouldn't be fun to be out in the West one bit.
Yeah.
It's funny because gangster films like were around long before Sergio made this one. But like I think the film's genius comes from its subtlety and its sadness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the film starts off with De Niro being like, it's so funny how similar this is to The Irishman. So like it starts off with De Niro being like, man, my life was pretty fucked, eh? And like we go back and we kind of watch this man's kind of descent into this life that he didn't even choose. Like the greatest insight this film gives is how your location shapes who you are. And New York absolutely shapes who Robert De Niro is, if that makes sense.
Yes and no. Yeah, I can't really talk about it without spoiling it. But like, yes, it's it's an interesting takeaway. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement entirely.
Really?
Due to aspects of the movie. Like I don't think
there was ever a question that Robert De Niro was going to end up as like a good guy. I think like where he was and when he was absolutely shaped who he was.
Yeah, but I can't say that that's like an excuse for,
Oh, no. People lived in the Prohibition era and didn't end up like, being violent murderers who broke the law.
Yes.
But he's in this circle of people and you can slowly see like his friends just push him and like he just kind of escalates down this track. And it's not like he's not in control. Like he's also a big influencer as well in that sense. But like it's just sad to see like...
This movie is devastating. This
Isn't
movie
it, though?
is so sad. It's such a sad film.
Roger Ebert, when he reviewed this film back in '84, he said that this poem is an epic poem. Sorry, he said this movie is an epic poem of violence and greed. And like, you can so see why. It kind of just bounces back and forth. You kind of see, let's get a little bit greedy, let's do some violence. And kind of just hops back and forth between the two.
It's a great point. I mean, like, that's a really great point because I think this movie is like so brutal. Like it is so incredibly violent, brutal, you name it.
And we've seen some violent films.
But I mean, you're seeing like the worst of humanity in this movie.
Yeah.
You're seeing like the scum of the earth, like, and living up to that, I guess, title. But at the same time, you walk away from this movie being like, that was like so poetic. That had so much to say. And it was so, it was so smart. It was so, subtle in a lot of ways. It was so beautiful. And yet at the same time, it's also just this brutal setting with like despicable people.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how no one's likable in this, like, or maybe Jennifer Connelly, but like, even then, it's like they all kind of just like even then they all kind of descend into this world. No one's really to blame for any of this. Like they all just kind of rub off on each other, all these bad people, and you just kind of watch them just like fall to the ground. And I don't know. It's funny that you brought up like Once Upon a Time in America, right? Because we watched this man's life over this period. I'm trying to guess what it's saying about America, because like I don't know if I got from this gangster film what I wouldn't have gotten from other gangster films, if that makes sense. I think for me, obviously the reason why I'm not loving it right now is because I did find the story a bit, it doesn't do anything new with the genre per se, narrative wise. Like maybe because I've seen Scorsese do this for years afterwards, but I've like Goodfellas, like Irishman, I've seen this story.
Yeah, I think what sets this one apart is specifically the character interactions themselves, and as opposed to like actually some of the twists and turns that this plot itself take. I think the plot is actually quite original. Like I really do. I think like the
Really?
Oh, I do. I think like some specifics in the plot are quite original as to like what happens in this movie.
I don't know, man. watch some other gangster films. I don't know about that.
But no, I do. I truly believe that. I think like the overarching story threads, like I think like if you look at characters where they end up at the end of The Irishman as opposed to this, it is quite similar.
Yeah.
But I think the way that they get there, and like I said, some of the twists and turns that this film takes are quite, independent of, of other films, I think. I think this movie has a lot to offer, and I was shocked in parts, I was moved in parts, I was
shocked
deeply
too.
troubled. I was deeply troubled in moments in this movie. Let's get to some specifics, I guess, since we're not in spoilers yet, so we can't really talk about, I guess, what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Technically, I'll say the film's a marvel. I think this is one of the best soundtracks.
Oh yeah,
I think the soundtrack is just exquisite. I think this is one of Ennio Morricone's best soundtracks ever. I think like if not his best.
Oh yeah.
Which is saying something again because it's totally different.
Dude, when the music kicked in, I'm like, how the fuck is this guy composing like these amazing soundtracks consistently? Like it's like
exactly.
It's like iconic. Like I remember the tune, and I'm like, oh shit, I haven't even seen this movie, but like it sticks with you, dude. So of course I downloaded it the second I finished this movie.
Good choice.
Yeah.
I think the filmmaking is exquisite. I think the shot selection, the shot composition, as well as the editing is just really excellent. I think the screenplay is really, really good. I think the acting, the performances are quite phenomenal. I think De Niro is really subtle in this movie. It's quite a dour performance.
He is, but he's kind of doing the regular De Niro thing. He also doesn't really have, I want to say like that Oscar scene. Like he doesn't, I don't think there's a point in the movie where like he's like full on going for it. Like we just kind of see him he just looks just like depressed all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like he's like that aimless wanderer in a way. You know, which harkens, I guess, back to like other Leone works as well. I think James Woods in this movie is fantastic as well.
He is. I think he gets better in this movie. I think James Wood kind of grows into the role as the movie goes on. He has more to do as well later on.
That's right. I think that's due to the character's growth as well as as other things.
I
as
don't
well.
know.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie. Like I love James Wood and I love Robert De Niro. They're the big two that stand out. By the way, Joe Pesci's in this, but like he's barely in it. So like
he's in it for one scene. Yeah,
he's in for like one scene. Like don't get too hyped up for it. So like because I think like you'll see his name, you'll be like, oh fuck, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, gangster film. Fuck yeah, we're back in. Like you're not gonna get that because I love these performances. You're right, and like I personally don't find the characters that original. I think the originality maybe comes right towards the end when you see how these characters end up. But like I feel like with these performances and the way what they're doing, I feel like the film goes from really exciting to really boring and just consistently switches between the two. Like you have these characters go through a really intense moment and then you're just kind of back in the day of their life and they're just kind of like, oh fuck, we're making enough money yet? And then it suddenly goes back to some confrontation and then it goes back down. Like did you feel that switch or were you consistently over the 4 hours being like, feck, I'm in this movie? Like
I was shocked how into it I was. To be honest.
God damn it,
I thought the time like went by really, really quite quickly. I was like, damn, he's got me again. He's bloody got me again, this guy. And even just like those everyday scenes where like people are just like, you know, going about their business. But I feel like that's pretty few and far between.
This dedicates a lot to the world as well. Like we spend a lot of time with a lot of random characters and like just flesh out the world. It's like I feel like we're doing like a fuck ton of side quests right now. It's like we're just reading all the characters and we're learning a whole lot about them and that kind of stuff. And like I don't know, it doesn't. Maybe for me, I don't think it added up to the sum of the parts. I think because like Robert goes through a full arc. I think James Woods goes through a full arc. But outside that, like I think we introduced a lot of people that I don't think go anywhere. They're kind of just like one note in that kind of sense. Like
I think Elizabeth McGovern's also really, really, really good as well.
She's fun. She's really, really fun, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was really, really awesome as the older version of that character. I think they're the three kind of performances of the movie, but they're also the characters that this movie kind of like only really focuses on. I mean, like we focus on some of the other gangsters and whatnot slightly, but again, like I feel like they still had their own identity and their own characterizations, and maybe if they'd been the lead of this movie, it would have been like as interesting if we'd really got to know them. But yeah, this is De Niro's movie. This is Woods' movie. This is that's what we're here to see.
Maybe you can educate me, Brenton. Okay, maybe you can sit me down this couch. All right, look, what did this film do differently to Godfather? Like what does this make it stand out more than Godfather? Not Godfather. Bloody Goodfellas.
Well, look, I think you're dealing with films that have got very, very different identities, I guess, in terms of like their setting, their characters, and whatnot. Goodfellas is much more upbeat than this is. You know, it's that Scorsese. True. It's like a mix of
tone, if anything. Like.
Yeah, it's like Wolf of Wall Street meets Once Upon a Time in America. You know, whereas Once Upon a Time in America is kind of this epic tale that covers the expanse of a lifetime, but then in that as well, it's also like the lifetime, I guess, of a singular city. You know, and how that city changes over time, and as well as that, like just this sad story about.
That's the thing. You're so right. I was more interested actually in just New York itself than the actual characters. That's where I found the most insight.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's so different tonally to Goodfellas. Goodfellas is like, it's doing that Wolf of Wall Street thing where it's like putting you in the world. It's like drawing you in as an audience member.
And you also want to be in the world, I think.
Yeah, that's right. It's like you want to be there. You want to.
You don't want to go to this New York, do you, Brenton? Like,
you get this allure as to like what it's like to be a gangster and to be involved, to be on top of the world, and then like that's ripped out from underneath your feet, and there's betrayal and whatnot in Goodfellas, and then at the end of it, you're left asking questions of like, well, was it worth it? You know, and like what happens when you end up with nothing at the end of it? Whereas this movie is much different. It's like this whole like, it's exploring themes of like, what loyalty means and what like family means. On top of that, like it's like doing, things, like in terms of like what makes us human. Do we have consciences? Like, what makes a good person? What do you choose to do with your life?
Yeah.
But the
maybe don't shoot people, Robert De Niro. Maybe that'll make you a better person.
Yeah, totally. But like also like memories is a big thing as well.
And how we remember as well, and like,
how we remember things.
Also, I think nostalgia.
Yes, and growth, as in like the literal growth of like from childhood to adulthood.
We see Robert De Niro just like go on like one of those like he measures his height against like the wall, like he's just like putting little pencil marks. Like I'm growing over this movie.
The other big thing is like the loss of innocence is like just like it's like jumping out of the screen. It's like the loss of innocence, and this is where I disagree with you. I don't think this movie's ever saying that the setting is the reason. I think it's saying that the character characters are a reason, but maybe the characters
No, because I feel like a lot of this is out of their control, especially like the way prohibition goes through. Like I feel like especially there's so many situations that escalate and they have to adapt because of what's happening in the city at the time. Like the reason they kind of become gangsters is because they kind of notice that to get ahead in the world they have to just turn to crime. It's like that classic. It's a classic story about the American dream. It's like, you know, they can't build a world on their own. You know, they're not getting hired, these boys, so they just end up doing their own work. It's like, I think if they weren't in New York and they weren't in prohibition, I think these characters could have done so much better with their lives, but they haven't. And it's like, and also they witness a lot of crime. It's so contagious in this world. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I agree with that, but it's like, at the same time, I don't think the movie ever, it never gives that as an excuse though, Nathan, from the outside perspective. Like, that's what I mean. Like, it's never New York's fault.
No,
in fact,
we never see Robert De Niro be like, fuck, I should have moved to Miami, like it's never that. Like,
well, there's constant conversations, particularly with one character thread that's like, you know, you do have a choice. You can decide, you know, what you do with yourself and what you choose to do. But it's always this question of loyalty, you know what I mean? Like loyalty and at the end of the day to what? But anyway, like we could talk about this for days.
We could. I don't know. Like,
days.
you know what's really funny? I look at like, I was reading about this movie, Brenton, because like Sergio Leone initially had like what's like 10 hours of footage and he wanted to make this movie like 6 hours, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I can't even imagine this fucker being longer. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much. I think also with Sergio, and I think I'm getting impatient with this, like he takes a minute to film something that could be shot in like 3 seconds. Like he loves his crowd shots, he loves his panning shots, like every fucking thing that happens in this movie. Like there's like, this film was like 50% reaction shots. Like, like it's just, I'm just sitting there going, come the fuck on. It's like, get either shoot something again, or it's like, oh, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I would say look like a modern audience, like a modern cinema goer might struggle, I guess, in this because of that. But at the same time, I think that's kind of the point still. I think he wants you to be retrospective and to sit there and dwell, I guess, on what it is that's going on. And like, you're right, that will be for some people, and for other people's it won't be. For me, it definitely is. I just think this movie is definitely a masterpiece, and I just sat there and was glued, I guess, to the screen, which I wasn't expecting to be over 4 hours. Yeah, like it's amazing, and I think it's honestly one of the best movies I've ever made. And I think it's one of the movies that is probably the most beautiful in a lot of ways, from the cinematography to the story. I'm actually really keen to watch it again at some point.
Wow.
Honestly.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're rating it. It sounds like Brenton's giving his thumbs up.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Yeah, absolutely. This movie's a masterpiece, and I recommend anyone who's a fan of cinema who likes gangster flicks to check this out. If you like Scorsese's work, I think definitely see some of the inspirations that are in this film.
Yeah.
On top of that as well, I think it's worth giving it a shot if you're into Leone's other works, such as the Dollars trilogy or Once Upon a Time in the West. Yeah. Even though this movie isn't a Western.
It feels like a Western though. There's definitely confrontation points where like you can definitely see the Western techniques being used. And it's so funny now seeing all 5 of his major works, I think now we kind of understand how Sergio feels about America after seeing like 5 of his takes on American culture. And it's like, and it's funny, this is such a I love America movie, but it's also such a like, man, America's got issues kind of movie. You know what I mean? Like, which is also just America in general. Like, if I was to recommend gangster films to my friends, this feels like a gangster film. This feels like the gangster film you finish gangster films on, where you go back to its roots and you kind of see where this all kind of came from. Like this Scorsese wave, like this certain interpretation of gangster films. It's like, because this feels like a fucking novel. This movie, it's like maybe because it was based on the novel. I would not recommend to my friends on a Thursday night. Jesus Christ, it's like weirdly, I don't think this is a communal watching experience. Like, because it's so sad. I feel like if I was watching this with my friends, I think we would have just talked about this during the movie. I think they would have been on their phones. It would have pissed me off. Like, I would have sit through this film in silence and just kind of watch this man's kind of fall from grace. Like, I don't know. I'd recommend other gangster films over this. I'd recommend not Irishman, because I don't think Irishman's better than this. But like,
but I was gonna ask, like, would you rather watch Would you rather watch The Godfather or this?
I'd rather watch Godfather over this, to be honest with you. And that's funny because I didn't love Godfather, but like, and they all got Robert De Niro. Like, yes, you could argue that the story is original. Like, we literally haven't seen the specific story being done of, you know, of Robert De Niro trying to find some money and just being like, wait, what the fuck happened to this money? And we slowly get hints as to what happened to it. It's a bit like Fargo. It's like, where's the suitcase? It's in Minnesota. But like, I don't know. I can't imagine a casual movie watcher as well, like, just getting around this. Like, you know what I mean? And that sounds so pretentious, but like, I think like it's a lot. It's a fucking meal, mate. Like, you just can't. This ain't your bloody airplane snack. Like, you gotta
sorry. Yeah, I think the length is definitely a strong aspect of, like, you know, I think it might be daunting, but I just recommend people watch it in 2 sittings. Like, honestly.
Yeah, just watch it in 2 sittings. Like, but yeah, I feel like Scorsese took it and maybe went in directions I prefer over this, and maybe this comes down to taste. But like when you look at the piece of work, dude, objectively, it's like it's well crafted. Like the film does also what it sets out to do. I just don't know if it's my cup of tea, mate. I just think it's far too long. It outstays its welcome, and I don't think it has that much originality in it. I think like the originality comes from the way it's made rather than what it is, and also I don't think its message about America is inherently that insightful. It's like, yeah, we know crime is shit. We know like this greed corrupts a man. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I kind of almost wanted it to go places I was surprised at. I think actually, you know what? I think that most of the originality actually comes from the child moments, despite the fact it's like you get this shitty child performances. So I don't know, man. Let's talk about this in spoilers.
Yeah, sure. Let's get onto it.
Yeah, thumbs down, by the way.
Oh, thumbs up, by the way.
You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh.
Continue on that point in the spoilers. I was actually, despite the shitty child acting, I was inherently hooked as to how these kids were gangsters, because that's something I haven't seen before, Brenton. I think the closest we've seen this world is like Oliver Twist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's very similar to Oliver Twist in a lot of ways.
Would this film have been better if these kids were working for Fagin in New York?
I mean, they kind of are.
They kind of are, aren't they?
Like, you're not wrong. I mean, like, they do have like a boss, I guess, that like, you know, they don't live with him, so that's something. So I mean,
would you have paid all the money if something like this? They just start singing, "I could pick a pocket or two," just like as they're strolling around New York.
Absolutely. I would have given them a cash for that. Nathan, let's talk about some fucked up shit that's in this movie. God, there's a lot of fucked up shit that I just want to address. Like, and like I was thinking about the childhood sections that you're bringing up there, and I was just thinking about that scene when like the police officer was paying to have sex with the minor.
Jesus
they were taking photos.
Christ.
Were taking photos of it, and then were using that to blackmail the police officer, so he'd pay them to have sex with this girl as well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, so he'd endorse their gang by like leaving them alone and leaving them to have the streets or whatever. Like, it was just, this movie's like a bunch of fucked up situations with like deplorable, terrible people.
Isn't it?
Like, no one in this movie is redeemable at all. Like, no one.
It's so bad, like how everyone acts in this movie, because like this cop is an arsehole, right? Because he takes like Robert De Niro's watch at a point. He's like, fuck off, kids. Like, the cop never inherently finds out what they do that's bad, but like he just says these kids are up to no good. And by the way, we know these kids are up to no good, but the cop doesn't know that. and then later on, when we find out this cop's an absolute arsehole, because one, he's fucking a minor, which is just abhorrent. But then two, like, he is so quickly brought over, and the way it's done is such a fucking meme. But the way it's done is that these kids, like, this guy is like on a rooftop, right? This police officer's like having sex with this like minor, right? Who's like, you know, acting like a prostitute, or is a prostitute. And the kids decide to like take an incriminating photo, but because it's like fucking 1900, right? Because it's like literally like 100 years ago, the way they take an incriminating photo is exactly how they did it. They had to like fucking set up a camera, wait like fucking 10 seconds for the thing to develop, like pull out the slate of film, like the slowest way possible to take a photo, and still the cop doesn't notice. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. Like, it goes back to that thing of like the loss of innocence. There's so much shit that goes wrong in this movie, and like people are just like treat each other fucking terribly. Like, no one comes off good in this movie. By the way, what do you think of the character of Max? James Wood. Like, we're introduced to Max at the start. Like, they go to rob the drunk guy, you know, and get the watch off him. But then like James Wood's like on the cart, and he blocks off the view from the police officer, jumps down, helps the guy back onto his cart, and then robs him that way.
Yeah.
You know, and then he becomes friends with De Niro, and then they become best mates, start this gang, they grow up together, etc. and whatnot. And at the end, there's also the big twist with Max. And,
yeah.
You know, who is consumed by greed and also I guess consumed by expectation maybe of himself, you know, and that he wants to do better than his father, has mentioned a lot, etc. But what do you think of that character? You know, when he first came on screen, you were like,
I was that interested in him potentially. It's like, also I've so hard matching the kids' faces to like James Woods, so it's like also because they act very differently later in the movie. Like child James Woods doesn't always act like adult James Woods, which is really funny because later on we see child James Woods again when James Woods is like shit, did I have the secret son that I didn't know about? It's like they're literally the same actor. And like, if you didn't get the hint, he's like shit.
Yeah, that character's literally there for De Niro to see it and be like, I see what the fuck's going on here.
I see what's going on here, you cheeky bugger. But tell you what, I think out of all the kid actors, I think he's probably the best. You know what really pissed me off? Because I like James Woods' like arc in this movie, right? I think it's really funny seeing him slow descent to violence, and like he's like, go on, De Niro, go on. Let's just, you know, let's have a bit of fun. And De Niro's like, oh, fine, fuck it. It's funny seeing him interact with these other kids, because that's why I felt more interested in James Woods. Woods, I swear to God, I know what it was with like 1890s New York, but for some reason, every fucking job in the city is done by a child. Like, did you not find this weird? That like every fucking shopkeeper is a child? Like every like delivery man is a child?
I think it's pretty common, dude. Like, I think like children were like used and abused.
I don't know, man. I still get fucking awkward when like a 14-year-old serves me at like, a grocery store and it's like their first gig. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Like if this came back, I feel like the world would adjust.
There's nothing worse than like ordering a coffee and like, look, props to young people. You're awesome out there.
Yeah.
You're taking life by the hand. I love that you're out there, like, getting your first job or whatever. Like, that's awesome. But when you go to order a coffee and there's like some 12-year-old behind the machine, I'm just like, oh no. No.
And like they're trying to fucking tap an iPad even though they're meant to be knowing how to do this shit. And you're like, for fuck's sake. And like, they're always sweating. They're always looking over their shoulder because they've just started. Like,
always sweating.
I feel like also like when it comes to you like dealing with kids who are doing their first jobs, there's like no common ground. I swear to fucking God, when I was 14 and my first job, I was like a checkout chick. So I was like on like, the belt, like scanning groceries. I swear to God, adults would look at me like, fuck, I have to talk to this child. Like as I'm scanning their groceries. I swear all adults would be like, oh, so how's school? They're like, hey, do you like your job? Like, it's like adults would always just be so nervous they like have to talk to kids. They always ask the same fucking questions. They're like,
yeah.
I kind of wanted a moment in Once Upon a Time in America where like, James Woods is just like delivering shit. And like someone's like, oh, so how's school, James Woods? Like, are you liking working for the first time? And he just punches them or something like that.
What did you think of James Woods and Robert De Niro's relationship?
This is weird, dude. I don't know what the fuck is going on in like Prohibition New York, but like these fuckers, there's like the bond that brothers have, and then there's this. Like, I remember like when they immediately find out that this woman's being a prostitute and they blackmail the cop, they're like, okay, now let's take turns fucking this prostitute. And like they're making jokes that like Robert De Niro can't get it up. And then he like comes and like
No, that's important. No, it's important that James Woods can't get it up.
Oh, James Woods can't get it up. But yeah, sorry, forgive me. Like he still can't. He's old. But like Robert De Niro, like he like has sex with the prostitute and he like comes in like a minute. Everyone's like making jokes about it and they're all watching him have sex. It's like there's a point in the movie when they're adults where they bump into this woman that this is fucked up. There's so many things that are fucked up. Okay, they rob a bank at one point, right? And during the robbing a bank, Robert De Niro, he rapes... No, is it Robert De Niro or is it James Woods? It's James Woods that rapes her, right?
In the bank holdup, you mean?
No, it's Robert De Niro, yeah. Robert De Niro rapes this woman during the bank heist because, he's like, you know what? While robbing a bank, why not rape a woman? And so he rapes her. Then they go back to this, like, brothel and it turns out she actually works there. There's a point where the woman comes into the room and then she's like, I don't recognize you boys. And they're like, oh, we were the ones that, like, robbed you and raped you. And they decide to like, in order for the woman to recognize them, they all decide to whip out their dicks.
Yeah, no, they put on their bandanas over their faces, and then she's like, oh, which one of you was the one that raped me? And they all like, they reveal themselves, and then she goes up to James Woods, and then they start a relationship. So okay, the reason I asked about this James Woods and De Niro relationship, is, and you brought it up that there's something weird going on,
isn't
right?
there?
And it's very clear to me what's going on.
Oh,
in this movie.
okay, okay.
It's very clear that Robert De Niro is like, sees Max as like a brotherly figure, someone that he really looks up to, someone that, is someone that's like a blood brother, right? Whereas James Wood is totally in love with Robert De Niro.
Absolutely. Like unabashedly. Like
it's totally, and it's so fucked up.
Isn't it?
The fact that, like, for instance, like, so basically De Niro has sex with Peggy.
Yeah.
And then, like, he tries to have sex with Peggy and he can't get it up. But it's like he, like, wants what he's just had, like, sexually. It's real weird.
And it's so subtle the way the film shows it.
Yeah. And it's so subtle. You might never pick it up, but it's like, and then it's like he, like, takes this prostitute as well, like, after De Niro has her. And he, like, has her and he, like, admits, he's like, I fucking hate this woman. Like, I don't give a shit about her.
Jesus Christ. The scene where he's, like, asking her to leave the room, it's just like...
Yeah.
It's like, it's so rude. Jesus.
But it's like he's like trying to like prove his manhood to Robert.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up. And then this goes to like the end twist, which I'm just gonna get to right now because it's so fucked up. But it's like that whole scene where he's like, I want you to kill me because basically I love you, and it's like the only way that like that I can make this right.
Does James Wood say I want you to haunt me? Does he say at one point? Like
it's pretty much that scene.
It's pretty much
and
Wuthering Heights,
he's like, why don't you want to kill me? He's like, I took your money, I took you. It's like he's like, I conquered you basically. I took your money, I took your woman, I took everything, from you. And I did this because you betrayed me and basically wouldn't be my boyfriend. And I'm like, man, this is fucked up.
And it's so funny because he gets so depressed, and then the way James Woods goes, which is so fucking ridiculous, is the Robert De Niro. He just walks down the street. He's like, man, I'm not going to fucking kill you. Fuck this. He walks away. And then like James Woods decides to like just like swan dive into like a garbage truck, which we don't even see.
Oh.
And cause like, he drives past and like, the truck drives past and Robert De Niro looks back and he sees James Wood like exit the building and then like the truck goes past and then like James Wood is gone. So presumably we know he goes into this garbage truck. But like, can we talk about this garbage truck, Brenton? Cause like, what a fucking hazard this garbage truck is. Like, it's got this like fucking drill in the back of it that like grinds the garbage like live up.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like so easy to just accidentally even just knock into if like a garbage truck is even like parked. Jesus Christ, how did garbage trucks used to be like this?
I feel like things went wrong, which is why the design changed. But just on that scene, man, that's a heck of a scene. That's a heck of a moment in the film and it's a heck of a way to show that the James Wood getting hit scene, basically.
Yeah. And it's a weird twist as well. The fact that like, they like Robert De Niro thought they got like, cause Robert De Niro tries to get James Woods arrested, right? Cause he's like, dude, like you're going to keep on committing crimes. You're trying to rob the federal bank at one point. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
So he's like, he dobs him in to like, say, hey, police, here's like a lesser crime James Wood did. And then, there's like a big shootout.
Well, no, he dobs the whole gang in, to be fair. He dobs everyone in. He dobs everyone in for some lesser crime. And he's like, we're just going to serve a year or whatever. And like, that's his plan.
Yeah. But then next minute,
James Woods like kind of like saves Robert De Niro's life / wants to haunt him for the rest of his life. So he knocks him cold.
Yeah.
Happily kills the other two best buds, from childhood, frames his own death, and then assumes this role as basically as a politician. You know what I mean? As a member of this like kind of like crime gang that's also got like immense power in government. And then eventually they just get fed up with him and they just like, want to do him off. And that's when he calls De Niro and he's like, hey man, I'll give you the money if you just like, top me off and I guess kiss me maybe. I don't know. Like it's really...
You're not wrong.
It's really quite an interesting character.
Isn't it? Like, it's funny how subtle the film does with homoerotica because like it's not a prominent theme if you're not looking for it. Like this could so easily go over your head. No, that's right. Like you have to be active watching this. Like,
look, as soon as he was looking through the peephole at him kissing the girl,
yeah,
I was like,
you saw what was going on.
He wasn't looking at the girl.
What the fuck is with this peephole, Brenton? This is so weird.
And that's the other thing. As soon as he's like, oh, come on, noodles, come on. Like after that scene, it's like, well, why would that guy like call him away? Like he's like with this girl.
Yeah, he's like picking up Jennifer Connelly. It's like
I see what's going on. Yeah,
isn't this crazy? Because this is Jennifer Connelly's first ever film role. Like what a place to start, right? Jesus. Like, she fucking struck gold there.
I know. Imagine being one of these kids working with Sergio in this film. Like, what a confusing but incredible experience.
I'd love to, because we saw a lot of interviews after this movie. We did some research about everyone gushing over this movie. But interesting to see what Jennifer Connelly has to say about this. Like, she'd be like, man, this is crazy. And now I'm bloody, I'm Spider-Man's AI. What an arc.
Do you want to talk about, you were mentioning the peephole though? Before?
Yeah. Because I like the arc that Jennifer Connelly goes through in this movie, actually. I think it's fascinating because, like, we only see her for a little bit. This is so fucking weird, right? Because she's a ballerina. She's like, haha, I'm dancing. And like, Robert De Niro's peeking for a while. And it's kind of cute, this little romance at the start of the movie. Robert De Niro gives her a bit of a smooch and, they're having a little thing go on. And then it just takes, like everything else in this movie, it's like the one glimmer of hope. And then it just takes such a dark turn.
Absolutely. Well, it takes a few dark turns because this character's really interesting to start off before we get to the real dark turn.
Yeah.
So I just want to preface that before we get to it because I think there's some important details here that are like really quite fucked up in their own way, right? Because she says to De Niro as a kid, she's like, she likes him. And you can tell that she really likes him. But she's like, it doesn't matter what I feel, right? Because it matters what I think. And what I think is I want to be the best. I want the best. I want to be on top is like, what she says. And it's kind of a fucked up thing. And it's like, this like her eyes like spark up when she says that. And
it's very all about Eve, isn't it? Maybe she turned into Eve.
That's right. So then she goes away and then she comes back later in the movie. They run into each other and he's like, oh, were you waiting for me? She's like, I was counting the days or whatever, but it doesn't matter because I'm a ballerina. I'm a dancer now for real. And, fuck that, but I'm getting my career and I'm going to make it big in the movies. Right.
Yeah.
And then Robert De Niro's like, fuck this. I like love this. She's the love of my life. I've been working, with this gang to get at least some money. I'm going to spend a whole shitload of it and take her on the most romantic fucking date of anyone's life. Right.
And dude, I'm so sad we did our dates episode before this. Like,
dude, this date is incredible.
Isn't this amazing?
He books out this incredible restaurant that's like the seaside restaurant. And he's
my God.
I booked up. They're all tables for two. you pick one and that's where we sit. She picks the window side one. He sits down, have whatever you want. It's incredible. We get this wide shot and it's like incredibly romantic. The music's going and you're going, oh wow, this is just beautiful. She's like, at the end of this, he's like about to propose.
Yeah.
She's like, you know what? Fuck that. Like, I just came here basically to give you the due courtesy to be like, this is never going to happen because I'm going to Hollywood and I want it all.
I'm going to Hollywood, baby.
And then they get on the car on the way to presumably drop her off home and he rapes her. And it's absolutely horrifying.
There's a lot of rape in this movie, but this is...
Yeah, there is.
God,
but it's just...
This is so ugly. And the driver is just kind of letting it happen, which is even more despicable. Actually, there's a lot of sex in cars in this movie, but like, Jesus, it's just so heartbreaking. Because Robert De Niro is just doing it completely out of... Because he's heartbroken. And he's just like... And he's not even doing it because he's angry. He's just doing it because he's so desperate.
That's right. He's such a fucked up, despicable guy that he's like, he can't take no for an answer, basically. And he's like... And it's not that... It's not even just that. It's like... It's just like rocked him to his core because it's like the one good thing in his life that he's always like hoped for. And he's like, fuck this. And he just like does this like horrific act. And then we get this like shot like as he gets out of the car at the end of it and he's obviously conflicted over like what he's just done.
Which you hope he has some conscience in there, but like...
But again, like this, we'll get to that whole thing of like having a conscience in this movie like later on when we talk about fan theories and whatnot. But then he like just basically tosses money. He's like, just take her home or whatever. And then we see her again. The next time we see her again is like in the future when she's like made it, I guess, as an actor and she's on Broadway.
Oh my God, Brenton. Did you fucking squeal when Cleopatra came back?
Absolutely.
We're back, Brenton.
Cleopatra's back on classic movie Banter.
Elizabeth Taylor, she's back in the role.
Can I be honest though? Like this Cleopatra death scene was 10 times better than what we fucking saw in Cleopatra. It was better. It was like a snippet from it, seeing it like on stage on Broadway.
I thought the exact same thing. I thought like, why didn't Sergio direct the Cleopatra film that we reviewed? I'm like, Jesus Christ, even this is fucking better than the shit we got. It is so bad.
So she makes it on Broadway, right? She makes it on Broadway and De Niro's there, old man De Niro seeing the show and he goes backstage.
By the way, speaking of old man De Niro, isn't it funny how similar old man De Niro back then actually looks to De Niro now? Like they fucking nailed the way De Niro aged.
They absolutely nailed it. It's absolutely incredible. It's some of like the best makeup I've seen in a film.
I was like, holy shit, maybe he is a time traveler.
It's spot on.
Isn't it though?
Anyway, so he talks to her and he's like, how's things? And she just looks fucking miserable. It's like one of those scenes that's like, and it's like you can just see that like, like chasing this dream or whatever is just like withered her away and she's like kind of a shell of, I guess, like what she was.
Again, very similar to All About Eve. Like.
And then you realize obviously when he sees her son and whatnot, that like of what's happened with freaking Max and what's happened, that you're like, you can see why she ended up with Max, like from throughout the film. Like in some ways it's like, it's that they're both very ambitious people. Like they're both so ambitious in a lot of ways. But also like I think she went with Max for other reasons too, probably for security, like with the money and whatnot, and like being able to like be an actress. And also like, like it's this weird thing that she's like, she still like has these mixed feelings for De Niro and it's like really fucked up.
Isn't it though? Like
you're like watching these scenes like unfold, like this is really complex and just like that's why I want to watch it again, because I really want to get a grasp as to like what's going on in these characters' minds. Yeah. And it's just like, don't go to this party tonight if you want like your memories ruined, because they're already pretty fucked up anyway. But like, like just like be happy with the memories that you have at the moment, because this is gonna like destroy your world.
And it's funny because there's a lot of misremembering as well, like of like them like looking back on what they actually did back in the day. So it's funny how this film comments on that, because like the film is such a great, it's a great deconstruction of nostalgia, this film, right? Because like this period has been so romanticized, this prohibition period. Like fuck yeah, we're all partying during like I think about like the scene where they had the prohibition cake, and they're all like dancing and that kind of stuff. They're all cracking bottles. Like it's such like that, but it's funny because it's done with such irony in this movie. So like it's funny when these characters are kind of have like the hangover of like the 1930s and like all that kind of stuff. Like it's funny, we don't see the Second World War in this at all. We just kind of see this depression, and these characters are trying to grapple and like make amends and like trying to like reconcile with these things that they've done, and they just can't, and like and they refuse to do it anyway. I just find it really funny that they just make peace with it, like because they've done some horrific things, dude. Like to be honest with you, out of everything that they did in this movie, I mean, like out of the rape, out of the bank robberies, all that kind of stuff, the thing that shook me the most was when they swapped the babies.
Yeah, it was horrible.
What the
horrifying.
fuck?
Yeah,
because like they literally do it just to spite this police officer, and like, but that's the thing, they like, so they swap his newborn son, right, with a different like cage,
Yeah.
with a different baby in like this hospital. They all pretend to be doctors, and there's like a room where there's like 50 fucking babies all like crying in their cots, and like they decide that swapping one baby isn't good enough for one of them, so they swap like all of them.
Yeah.
So like when the police officer calls and says like, what the fuck, and he sees like this his newborn son has a vagina, which is, and you see how horrified he is, and like his 4 daughters are just kind of sitting there. You can tell the cop's an asshole as well, but his daughters are like, man, fuck dad. When he tries to find the identity of the child, they like lose the list of like which babies swapped, and they just decide to just give random babies to random parents, and they're just like,
Yeah, the boys are even numbers, the girls are odd numbers, done. And they're like, And it's like, and it goes back to this thing of like, it's like the excuse that you always bring up. It's like, hey man, like some of those kids, we've just like, granted them their best wish basically and given them a good life, and some are going to shit lives and they all just laugh about it and move on with their days with no remorse.
I just don't get it, man. Like I just hate all of them. I'm just like, I'm good, all of you die miserably. It's like,
they're horrible people, and it's like the only one that you kind of are regretful for is like the little boy from the start of it who is shot dead on the street, which is such an amazing sequence.
Oh,
like,
isn't
it is
it though?
Such
Oh
an
my
amazing
god,
sequence.
that's the most Western this movie feels like. Like they're all kind of like riding in slow motion. They're all like shooting the cops, and like they get stabbed at one point. And this kid's just like great death.
But also like
great,
his
great
dying words when he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I tripped. And he just dies in his arms, and then you see that loyalty that loyalty come out when he like hunts down the old gang leader basically and stabs him to death. But then he just goes with this rampage and like just starts like slicing and dicing that other cop as well.
Yeah, jeez.
And like it's full on. You're just like, holy shit. When he references that moment, further on in the movie, you're like,
it's crazy. Brenton, I squealed in this movie when we had a cameo appearance I wasn't expecting.
Was it Joe Pesci or was it someone else?
Nathan? It was not Joe. I like Joe Pesci in this movie for the one scene he was in. Great, good to see you, Joe Pesci. But get the fuck out of the room, Joe Pesci. Step aside. Because, oh boy, from the Rocky films, we have Paulie, who is in this movie. And I was so happy to see him, Brenton.
Paulie's back in a big way. And it's basically the same character.
It is essentially the same character.
And he's sitting there eating, like munching down on some
He's doing the same shit, and I love it. Dude, this podcast, if you could like draw a narrative arc over like the episodes that we've done over this show, it could just be how we feel about Paulie from fucking episode 1 to now. Because this is the greatest arc you and I have been on. Because I have gone from such like a fuck Paulie mentality to like, yeah, Paulie. I'm like so yeeting over this actor.
It's really funny because my biggest disappointment in this film was the fact that Paulie died, because I was gonna make it like maybe there's some crossover and this is actually Paulie.
Yeah, this could be actually Paulie.
But Paulie gets one of the most brutal deaths in this whole movie.
He gets like, fucking mauled in the eye.
He gets like shot through this like basically like this monoscope, like,
And great effect too. Like, you watch his head explode and you're like, whoa, Paulie. Like Sylvester's not gonna be happy about this at all. Like,
Exactly. Speaking of which, that scene is like, because they don't tell De Niro that they're gonna double cross this, this other gang and take them out, which is like, you think that's a bit of a safety risk, but anyway. But like that scene is brutal, dude.
Isn't
they just like take down that other. It's so like psychopathic too. Like you see what these boys have become, and you're like, holy,
you know what?
Shit.
I rarely say this, but I love the set design for this film as well. It's like a great like moment where the set design completely informs the scene. It's so beautiful when like they go through like a fucking like feather factory or whatever it is, and there's like this kind of, again, it's like this. It reminds me a little bit of like Vertigo, like this kind of like they're hunting down this kind of like this thriller almost of like trying to get this guy like not from running away.
Yeah, and it's like it's cool as well because the exterior of that is also like this like this old shipyard thing.
Yeah,
and there's these ships that like obviously the water's like gone out to sea, and like they're just like left like kind of grounded like by the like dirt road. Like it's a really interesting.
It's very melancholic as well. It reminds me of like what is it, that shipwreck painting that they watch in Skyfall? It's a little bit like that.
Yeah, totally.
It's very sad. And then for some reason after that, Robert De Niro thinks he has the same car from Spy Kids. He's like, don't worry guys, we could so swim in this. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, oh, we're gonna go sky high. And he just like dives it off the end of the plank at the dock, and they all just have to leave the car and just like swim for their lives.
Nathan, did you like the rule of 3 in terms of the reveal that like the first time that the thing happens with the water is that like James Woods is like Max is pretending like he gets back in the boat and pretends he's drowned, and then like he's dead but he's not dead. And the second time De Niro does the same thing to James Woods, and then at the end it's like actually happened for real, and this guy's been like fucking living the high life for like years basically. It is like, I took your money and I took your woman, what do you think about that, eh? And he's like
You're not wrong,
Yeah,
Brenton.
like literally, that's literally it. I love that last scene. I love that last scene how like De Niro's just like keeps referring to him as like his alias.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
he refuses to give in to like
acknowledge
this
it. It's
idea.
like, we'd never
and he's-
take the job. It's like, it almost sounds cliche what they're talking about, but it's driven by subtext. And I think that's probably where the script stands out the most.
It's so good.
There's one last little moment. I want to talk about the spoilers, Brenton, before we move on. It's such a small moment in the movie, but I need to bring it up because it's so fucking weird. Brenton, imagine you're in a cinema, right? You're in a cinema, you're watching a movie, and you're having a good time with your gal that you're with. You brought a date, and you start macking out with her in a cinema, and you're having a good time. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a police officer walks down the aisle of your cinema and like holds a fucking gun to your head, doesn't say anything, and you kind of just like you kind of pull apart from this girl and you turn around and like you're staring at this cop. He's pointing a gun at you and he's kind of looking to see if he recognizes your face, and then he realizes you're not the bad guy, but then proceeds to like use his gun to like unbutton your date and just start like circling the nipple with his gun. How would you react in this moment, Brenton?
It's hard to say. I'd like to think that I'd probably assault a police officer because it's really not okay.
It's like the law would be on your side. The courts would hold it up.
Yeah. I mean, like it. I guess I'd be doing some time if I did that.
Yeah.
But it's oh man,
This is such a weird moment in this movie. I'm like, I had to bring it up, dude, because I'm like, what the? No one in this movie is normal, and this scene exemplifies it. Like, it's such a mistake, motherfucker.
Nathan, I know you probably won't watch this movie again, but would you be interested in watching like the first 20 minutes and seeing like the amazing opening sequence and how like, you know, how they shoot his girlfriend at the time, knowing the context of what's actually going on?
Yeah, I think this movie would be better if I'm rewatch. Also because I know what the fuck is going on. Like, this is a long movie to follow, and I'm like, fuck, wait, what's this again? They're blackmailing this guy. It's like, they don't like the unions.
That opening scene though, like raises so much suspense, and like because those guys are like trying to like take out De Niro. And
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on? And then we're introduced to De Niro, who's like high off his face in like some opium den.
I love him in this.
Such a time, but yeah. Well, should we get into some special segments, like you said?
Let's do it, dude.
Special segment.
Ooh, so special. Did these characters learn the true meaning of Christmas? Like, it's such a big question for this movie.
No, I think there's a certain level of remorse there from De Niro.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I think that maybe James Woods learned something about, you know, the meaning of friendship, because but it's weird because I think at the end of the day, De Niro walks in at the end and he makes the choice not to kill James Woods. But it's like out of respect of like, it's like out of respect of his own sanity. He doesn't want to even entertain the idea that that's happened.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm just going to do this, like, you know, and you're this person and I'm not going to do the job you're asking me to do because my friend died that day and I saw his dead body.
Yeah.
That's what I have to live with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think he does learn something, right? I think
Something,
De Niro is remorseful.
He does go through a redemption arc somewhat because he's like, no, I'm not going to kill you.
Or it's hard because it's like he likes to think he's remorseful. You know what I
but
mean?
he's not.
Like he does. And in any case, I think there is regret there. There is strong regret.
But he ends the movie smiling. So I like to think that he's like, it ends with him smiling.
Yeah.
Maybe he's found an idea of like, not peace, but of understanding.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to think that. You hope so, but at the same time, it's hard to see this monster coming back, you know, being redeemed, because I don't think it's possible.
No,
really.
I don't think, and to be honest with you, I don't think anyone learned the true meaning of Christmas. It's like, I can't imagine like them, it would suck being old after this period of doing such these horrendous things, like to live with regret, you know what I mean? It's just,
yeah.
I just pity them at the end of the day, that these people just continually fucked up and they just never had that moment of morality. Like, they never even tried to redeem themselves over the years, you know? Like,
Well, it never even like occurred to them.
maybe this film needed Christmas. Maybe we needed a Christmas scene where like, you know, they sit down and they're just like, maybe we do need to discuss what we're doing with our lives.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, maybe in that massive party that they have at that point, which, by the way, in terms of like top 7 bars, which we've done in our special seasonal 7s, like, you know, check out that episode, top 7 bars. It's a good time. Dude, when they like, you know, they knife off the top of the cork off the top of the champers.
Oh my God.
And he starts pouring it into those classic, like, you know, those classic little glasses. But he like never lifts his wrist to like, you know, pour it separately into each glass. It's just like, no, just keep it pouring and move the glasses under the bottle. Dude, what a time.
I love it, man.
What an absolute time.
Even the beach party, when like they find out Prohibition ends.
Yes.
I was like, fuck, this is lit. I'm like, where were these parties? Like, dude, like, what a great time. So yeah, so all they needed was a good Christmas dinner. That's all Robert De Niro needs.
Maybe it's just like they just needed the end of the Grinch, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone's on Mount Crumpet, like having Christmas dinner with the Grinch.
They're all they're all holding hands at the end of the movie, like Rafa hoorah, just like standing on a fucking tree, like, oh, I love it.
Exactly. Which two characters should have kissed?
I mean, there's an obvious answer to this, Brandon. It's obviously James Woods and Robert De Niro. They should have had a good Mac out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like, there's no other answer. And like, to be honest, I think it could have worked. I think if the movie actually went there and like maybe we had not James Wood say like I love you, but just like have James Wood like try and like kiss Robert De Niro and have Robert De Niro like whack away James Woods. I think that could have worked. And you know what? I would have loved to see that scene where like James Wood makes out with him, he gets whacked away, and he just goes into like full Hades mode. He's just like, hey, Robert De Niro, I got to cut a deal with you. So like, listen quick, you and me, we got to be together.
I mean, sure, I'm down for some more Hades action.
Yeah,
why not?
Can we just talk about how fucking excellent James Wood is as Hades?
He is absolutely incredible. He's one of Disney's best villains for sure.
Like, it's so good and so fucking original for like the god of like the underworld. It's like literally after this movie, I went back and watched like some more Hades scenes from Hercules because I'm like, I just needed more Hades in my life. And he is so good in Hercules.
Yes. His voice is perfect for it too. You know what I mean? Like his voice is just spot on.
Just as this car salesman where he's just trying to like cut a deal every way he's doing, like he's just like sweating his ass off just to try and like fuck over Hercules. Cause like, and like, I just love it every time he talks to Pain and Panic and like, it's just so funny. Even like the way he talks about Meg, right? He has this like woman who's like the slave for him essentially. And he's just like, hey, you like Meg, don't you? Come on, she's pretty good, isn't she? Like, he's just, he's just so much fun. Like he sounds like I'd love to get a beer with Hades, I reckon. Like he'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm down with it, dude.
I love it when like they're at the party at the start of Hercules and he's just like, Zeus is like, oh, how's the underworld? And he's like, well, you know, there's this and that. And there's like, you know, a fuck ton of dead people.
I feel like, you know, if you were to get a drink with Hades from Hercules,
yeah,
you'd go to like Moe's and have like one of the flaming Moe's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like that same.
It's just his haircut, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he'd be down.
Oh, love him. It's like, and you're wearing his merchandise. It's just so fucking good, man. Oh,
so good.
It's a shame now because James Woods right now is sadly he's a bit more controversial these days. I don't know if you've read what he's doing these days, but he's
no, I haven't.
He's spurting out conspiracy theories and he's very very yeah. Sadly he's done a bit of like he will never work for Disney again. Like he'll Gina Carano it like
right
yeah like
okay right
yeah,
okay.
which sucks but for Hades, man, and for Once Upon a Time, what a good bloke.
Excellent performance. Well done.
Fan theories, Brenton. We talked about the ending a little bit. We've kind of avoided it because there's a popular fan theory out there where like the film begins and ends with 1933, right? It ends like its book ended with De Niro getting high in this Chinese club. So
yes,
there's a fan theory out there that because he's in the opium den and he's smiling, he's getting high and that kind of stuff, people have interpreted this film as being a drug-induced dream with Noodles remembering his past and seeing the future. So they're like, oh, maybe De Niro imagined the ending of this movie. Like his real life happened, but like everything at the end of it where like he comes back after 30 years, everything like that was just what he imagined in this high dream. And this fan theory got published by like this has been around for decades.
Yeah.
And Sergio Leone actually confirmed that this could be a genuine interpretation of the film.
Yes.
But do you like to think it is, Brenton?
So I wasn't really on board with this idea, like I'm thinking back to it, until there's a point in the movie that I was like, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. And it was the moment that after the James Woods hit happened and the kids came back through streaming through, you know, it was like a 4th of July kind of party thing and they were all like, you know, they were like partying and like, you know, screaming how much they love America or whatever. And they drove past and old man De Niro's left standing there and then it cuts straight back to the opium den.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I think it could be real. I think it's like he's like really trying to find some sense as to why, you know, he called the cops, you know, and they shot the shit out of his friends.
Yeah.
You know, and he can't live with it.
I mean, what a way to go as well. Just be smoking opium for ages. It's like, geez, Robert De Niro.
Yeah, and it's also like I think it's scary, that theory. I think it's really scary, that theory, because it means that in terms of what we see of the past, we see an idealized version of who De Niro's character.
Yeah, I know, because it could have been much worse then.
That's what I mean. I think he's actually much worse than what this movie makes him out to be, which is actually
isn't that saying something?
Quite compelling. Like it's quite compelling as a character, and also like, you know, just in terms of a film and like how it's made, but also like horrifying. I think the title also supports this theory. I think it's the biggest support.
Exactly, that Once Upon a Time kind of element. It's like,
yeah. I
think what's also the scariest thing is that we just see Robert De Niro smile, which is just such a rare thing in general. Like just to see him like,
and we're stuck there for the whole of the credits. We're like,
I know, Jesus, dude. I haven't been that shook since like the final shot of like Body Snatchers. I was just it reminded me of Donald Sutherland. I'm like, oh, I don't know which one's scarier.
Holy shit!
De Niro smiling or Donald Sutherland? Just like, oh,
dude. If you ever want to like, if you want to ever be freaked out, just like pause that still of Donald Sutherland from fucking Body Snatchers, and it's like the most horrifying. That curved finger with that. Like, it's just the...
Maybe that's how this film should have ended. Like the same thing, just De Niro in the den, just being like, just ties it in.
Do you reckon, like, President Snow should have had some body snatcher action at some point in the bloody Hunger Games trilogy?
Oh, absolutely, dude. Just let's go back to our Body Snatchers episode with Zach. It's very good. Just we talk about it at length there. It's great.
Check it out. Check it out.
Well, let's see what stills this movie.
It's blinding.
So, What Stills This Movie is a segment of the show where we pick a still, a single frame from the film we were reviewing, and we pick that on the basis of it being funny or just a beautiful piece of cinematography. You can find this still on our Instagram page, and there is a link below.
Yes.
Now, Nathan, we couldn't go by the most iconic shot from this film.
Yeah, dude, and like it's funny because like I wasn't on like a still hunt this movie. Nothing really stood out to me. Like there wasn't that many silly shots in this.
Yeah, it's funny also because I picked this and I didn't know it was what it was. You know what I mean?
Same.
Like,
I didn't know it came from this movie either.
I picked this still and I was like, oh man, this is like an amazing shot. I didn't know it was like this famous, like, you know, the most famous shot from this film.
I've seen this because people go to New York to get a photo on this street where like it's like an alleyway in New York and you just see the Brooklyn Bridge behind it, just perfectly arched through this alleyway, and it's so gorgeous. And like the shot of it's great as well because you watch the kids run from the left to the right of the frame.
Yeah,
and the soundtrack's blaring at this point. Like it's an iconic moment in cinema. You're just like it exemplifies what this movie is, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It exemplifies what the stories of all these gangster films are. It just personifies it.
Yeah,
and I think as well with the context of this film as opposed to like what has just happened, what these boys are walking from on the left to what they're walking to on the right. I think it's just like this moment. It's just captured, like,
and it's so metaphorical as well. Just like, you know, these kids, they're running past this bridge represents, you know, the peak of humanity, this construction, this triumph. You know what these kids could do. They could build this own bridge. You know, it represents this peak of humanity. You got these kids running around and like off to shoot someone up. So like it's just perfect.
But whilst they are led by this like their smallest member who is just playing in the streets.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's great.
It's a beautiful still, and it carries into the poster.
Banter.
Yes.
Let's look at this film's poster.
But is it art?
Because it's smartly when they released this movie, when Sergio was in the editing room, he's like, I reckon this will be the shot people remember. So he just smack-bammed it and put it in the center of the poster with this beautiful kind of like sepia tone to it. But I love in this poster, so the character shots that they've used, so they have two photos. On the left, they have the kids kind of like doing this gangster kind of like 90s album art pose.
Yeah.
Just looking real like stone-faced. And then you have them on the right as like their adult versions, just all in their suits.
I know, right? It's quite funny. And I'm glad that it has that there. I'm actually really glad that it shows both kind of sets of characters in both timelines.
Yeah.
I do like it. I also like the font for the title of this movie. I think it's really, really good. I like the gold. I like that, you know, it's got that gold filter on the poster as well. I just want to read the slogan as well. As boys, they made a pact to share their fortunes, their loves, their lives. As men, they shared a dream to rise from poverty to power, forging an empire built on greed, violence, and betrayal. Their dream would end as mystery that refused to die. Nathan, this doesn't need to be
there. It also sounds like a novel blurb. It's like,
yeah.
It sounds like you picked up the poster and giving it a read. Like, no, it doesn't need it. Yeah, get rid of it. But apart from that, this is one of the better posters, dude. I'd put this on my wall.
Exactly. Yeah, I would too. In fact, I will probably put it on my wall.
Title talk.
Ooh, it's the title.
Once Upon a Time in America. We kind of mentioned this before in regards to the fan theories. But I think this is a perfect title.
But I don't know if it says that much about America. I think like it's because that's a bit ambitious thing to say something about America. Like I think this is maybe Once Upon a Time in New York or something like that.
I really like it. I think it's a really, really strong title, and I think I just don't know what else you'd call it.
Certainly not Duck You Sucker. In fact, it would have been funnier if this one was called Duck You Sucker. I'm sad we'll never do title talk for that movie because it's just such a shit title.
I mean, why not? I mean, like Duck You Sucker. I mean, we could call it that.
I kind of wanted this movie to be called like Child Gangsters or something like that, just because I do find it funny that these kids just do fuck up their lives, like
Child Gangsters.
Yeah, I don't know, like Rugrats, but they're gangsters. I don't know.
Rugrats Gangsters Edition. I'm down with that.
No, I guess, yeah. I guess the Once Upon a Time is like a narrative thing. It's like, I guess it because it adds to that mythology element to it. It's like, this is a story. This is not a slice of life. You know, this is. I guess I get around it. Like, yeah. Oh, and obviously it's been parodied to death as well. So no, I guess I support it for now.
Hooray!
Well, let's pass it to the people.
pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
If you all head on over to the tomato meter, you will see that Once Upon a Time in America has a critical consensus of 87% with an audience score of 93. So audiences liked it more than critics, according to Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and like I can see why it's so high, but it's really because and this movie bombed. It cost like $30 million to make. It only made $5 million, and it bombed because like they cut out like half the movie for like theatrical release.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. They also put it in chronological order, which straight away
makes no sense.
that
Like,
just makes
no.
the movie horrible. Yeah, like it doesn't make any sense,
No.
and you're just going.
Because there's no tension as to why you have to find out Robert De Niro is looking for the suitcase of $1 million. It's like
That's right.
you absolutely need it. So yeah, I can see why, and I think it has made money. Like I think since re-release and all that kind of stuff in DVD sales, I think it has. It's ended up in the positive.
I tell you what, though, I feel for Sergio. Like that must have been horrible
Oh
to like
jeez, yeah. Also, this is his last film. Like he released
That's
this
right.
and then died.
to have the like having made this movie and then to have it just like gutted,
Yeah.
you know, for audiences. It just would have been awful.
But anyway, let's see what the critics are saying. Because Kenneth Turin from the Los Angeles Times, he liked it. Brenton. He said the film slips easily back and forth in time, dancing between the decades, often making the connection from one era to another solely by means of brilliant cuts that work like magic. And you know what? Saying like I think that's a really valid point because the film doesn't get enough props for how similar it makes like this 70-year period look. Like New York, like New York doesn't change, like America doesn't change in that kind of sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that one of the things that we really haven't sold this film on is basically the way it does its transitions. The transitions are like literally exquisite. They're seamless, they make sense, and you know instantly where you are. You know instantly what's going on and who everyone is. It's really strong. Like, yeah, well done. Paul Attanasio did not like it from the Washington Post and said, the movie's 4 hours long, but no one had the time to write a single real character.
I agree with him to an extent because I think I didn't talk about this enough in the spoilers, but like the reason I gave it a thumbs down as well is that like I think it's this sheer absence of morality where we never really see these characters kind of like have some recompense for what they've done. I think so alienated me watching this. I was kind of waiting for like at least one of them being like, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? Like just the sheer like absence of humanity in these characters. I can see why for Paul none of these people came across as real. Like they feel like such representations of the worst of humanity rather than being actual people.
Could you argue that their repercussions came from one being Robert De Niro and like literally living with guilt and shame?
That's the real crime. He's like, wait a minute, I'm Robert De Niro. Oh no.
Yeah, but like, or like, you know, James Woods, who was like literally like risen to the top, sure, and like lived a lifetime of luxury off crime and greed. But at the end of the day, he's still like offed by like the people that he spent his whole life getting close to. Or like the other two gangsters, you're just like literally shot dead on the street. Like I feel they do that. They do all get their comeuppance, and I think that's why this movie, like we say, is so sad because like no one ends up in a good way.
So I get it, man. I get it. I can see why this would be alienating for a lot of people. But hey, Ether W gave it 5 stars. They wrote, my favorite film. Critics and people who dislike this film, go watch Star Wars.
Okay, Eva, like, I mean, like, seriously, like, why Star Wars too? Like, are you trying to like take a dig at Star Wars and be like, it's not art?
No. Also, I think the original Star Wars is art. I think what they're trying to say is like, if you want that fast, action-packed, like, you know, popcorn movie, then go watch that over this. It's like, but I think slow cinema, like Irishman still was like hugely viewed on Netflix when like Scorsese dropped it. Like, people still watch slow cinema. Like,
I agree.
I know people who would never watch this because it's far too slow. I know people who never watch slow cinema. They'd rather watch something shit like Holiday. But like, at the end of the day, like, I don't think you have to choose between the two, right?
No, I mean, like, no. I mean, like, I like both, so there you go.
There you go.
I like Once Upon a Time in America and Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I get the best of both worlds. Like Hannah Montana says. Roshalita R says, with a 1-star review, this is a movie for old men who want to see slow shots of the past, with some gratuitous rape scenes. And it's 4 hours long. As a lover of mob movies, I'm baffled by this one's presence on the top lists.
I can kind of see where Rockalita's coming from. Like, yes, there's a lot of show shots. Yes, I guess you could argue the grape scenes are gratuitous, but I think that's the point.
Yes.
Because also, like, a lot of this is rare, dude. Like, there are a lot of, like we've seen gangster films before. Like, they're very kind of fast, a lot of them. The action is dominant. Like, it's weird seeing big character arcs outside the crime doesn't pay thing, like, in gangster movies. So I can see why for someone who loves mob movies, you're not going to get what you're used to getting with this. This is an outlier.
Yeah, look, I feel like, again, this movie's either going to be for you or it's not going to be for you. But I think at the end of the day, I think the majority of people will enjoy this and get something out of it.
Booble on YouTube wrote, anyone else enjoy the first half of the movie when they were young more than the latter half? And they got like 400 likes.
Yeah, I mean, like, like, hey, I mean, like, I guess, like, if you watch, I'd be questioning as to why you'd be watching this as a kid, but also, like, I guess,
Oh, you'll never get this to a child. Jesus.
as, no, but it's like when you watch, like, Oliver Twist when you're, like, you're little, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, how cool is that? They're all, like, pickpockets. Like, that's cool.
Brendan's like, I'm going to steal something now.
they're like living with some old man, but, like, they're all singing fun songs or whatever, and you're like, oh, this seems like fun.
And as an adult, you're like, wait a minute.
Well, as a kid, you kind of fall asleep in the second act of Oliver anyway, and you miss out all the point where, like, people get their comeuppance and, like, go to prison for, like, stealing stuff or, like, are killed.
Yeah.
But, like, there is like a child, and it's that nostalgia thing as well. It's so much fun seeing kids or being a kid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Like,
I would be interested to see someone cut this movie where it's just the child scenes and see how that works as a standalone work of art. Like, you go on Blind and just see the kid stuff and see if there's just a standalone story there.
I think it'd be quite underwhelming.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's like, it literally ends with him going to prison.
Yeah.
Anonymous Girl 3 years ago said, "This film is a masterpiece. I still own it on VHS and watch it once a year. Brilliant with a haunting soundtrack. Bravo, Leone." I think this movie would be one of those that'd be a culture out there where people just enjoy watching this movie once a year.
Yeah. In the same way you watch like A Wonderful Life on Christmas, maybe just like
Yeah.
like once a year, you're just like, let's be really depressed. Remind ourselves like the worst of humanity. Like,
I mean, it's appealing to me. I will definitely watch this movie again. Whether if I watch it once a year is a whole other thing, but you know, who knows? I won't say no.
that's very demanding. And lastly, Rob Ingham wrote on YouTube, the good old days. Brenton, is this the good old days?
I don't know. I mean, like, if anything, this movie did not want to make me live during the periods it takes place in. I was like, I'm very fortunate to have grown up in the period I've grown up in, and I would rather that than living in the situation that the characters in this film.
Nah, man, fuck the prohibition, fuck the 1920s. Like, we see some fun parties now and then, but like the rest of it's shit. Like, fuck that, man. It's like,
Yeah, it's a dog eats dog world. It's not nice.
well, hey, that was once upon a time in America, Brenton. We told the story.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathan, for joining me for another fun week of reviewing movies. And thank you, our listeners, are all out there for listening in and getting to the end of the episode.
Every week we say this, we're just like, well done. It's like it's such a mission. Like,
It certainly is sometimes. I mean, like, this is a long movie and this is quite a long episode.
yeah.
So thank you. And thank you to all of you back home. Like, we really appreciate it. If you want to write in and tell us your thoughts on the film,
Please do.
get onto us via our Instagram page, via our Twitter page, in the YouTube comments, or just send us an email. You can also send us an email, like we said at the start of the show, if you want us, if you have some movie suggestions for us to review.
Yeah, we do them.
We'd love to hear from you all.
Let us know what movie to do next.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.